Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Repotting session. I'm doing 4 large Dendrobiums. I'll see how much I'm going to film, but the first thing, as always, is let's get these out of the pots. We've got 2 that haven't been repotted a long time. One that's got a massive new growth coming on it and hasn't started roots yet, but it should do soon. And the other one is just in far too big a pot, plus it's been in it too long. So various reasons, but it is biggies. I don't know, I might have to move the camera right back actually. Obviously I'm not going to do them all in the tray at the same time. Something like that. So, right. I'm going to start with the one that's going to fall over if I'm not very careful. So if I start with that one, I should stop it falling over, shouldn't it? Now this is Nobly type, Sweet Pinky Momoko, and let's move the tag out of the way. This is all contrived to stop it falling over. It's in a pot with rocks wedged up against one side, and it has to sit on a tray to tip it over one way to stop it falling out. This is all part of the reason why I want to get this sorted out. So it's been in this pot quite a long time. It is a large plant, planted at a different angle. It might actually stand upright because it is quite evenly balanced, but it blooms on and off, this one. It doesn't seem to want to do a massive blooming. The 2 growths last year are not as big as they should have been, but it did produce 2 new growths. There are some old canes on here that this time I'm taking off because there's more than enough plump canes on the plant. So I'm just getting all the structure out of the way, scaffolding. There's been quite a lot of holding canes together and clipping them one against another to try and stop it falling over. It's just a very clumsy plant basically. But if necessary I will strap all the canes together in a bundle just to stop this overbalancing all the time. It'll take longer to get the scaffolding off than it will to repot it, I suppose. But these clips are difficult to come by, so I always keep them, preserve them. Right, is that all of it? Oh no, another one lurking down here. Right, so that's got the scaffolding off. Now, the plant hasn't exactly flopped, but you can see, to get it balanced, look at the angle of the pot. So to get all the canes facing upright, the pot's totally wrong. So by putting the pot back like that, I'm surprised that's standing up, but you can see the whole plant is leaning over that way. So when it's potted up this time, it will get... that's if I can get it out of the pot, of course, because this looks like it's well wedged in. Oh no, it's come out okay. Now this went in one of these not clear pots, whatever expression you want to use. But this has got algae in it, quite bad in places. I don't want to totally disrupt this root system, but the root system that's farthest away from the new growths, which is where I am now, can be taken right off, because that will be on the old canes, some of which I'm going to cut off in a minute anyway. So these are the old tired roots around the back of the plant. These were once the only roots it had, obviously. I'm eating away at the media from the inside out, which makes sure the oldest elements come off first. Right, I'm going to take much more than that off, probably not, but what I am going to do is take all these old tired roots off, which is mainly the centre of the plant basically. It's all this old stuff round the back. Now this is actually smelling quite mouldy, you know, sort of mushroomy I suppose is the expression. A lot of these roots aren't actually viable, they're actually gone over. But as I said, it's if it's going to produce new growths, it's going to be soon, and the new growths will produce a new root system. So this is the latest roots around here, and some of these are white. These have grown outside the pot, but some of these roots coming off of these newest canes have actually got growing tips, so there are actually some growing roots around this side of the plant. Right, now all I'm going to do is decide what canes are coming off. That one's coming off. It's just old tired canes out the back really. While I was at Helen's yesterday, she's actually, she grows indoors. She does put some of her plants out sort of on a balcony area, shaded from the midday sun by a massive beech tree. But she's actually put some nobly canes on their side in some moss and got kikis to grow. I thought that was rather good. I mean, yeah, I've seen it work before. It's not something I've ever tried, mainly because I've never needed to. So I'm just having a look at the structure of this to see some of these canes I'm taking off for cosmetic reasons, so that the plant will stay upright better. They're leafless canes, but they are still plump. But like I've said before, you can get to the point with a nobly where your leafless canes start outnumbering your leaved canes and are plump, which means the plant will constantly push resources into those older canes for storage purposes. Those resources will be better pushed into fewer canes that are newer canes. So sometimes an excess of canes is not a bonus. I think that's enough, and I think that'll stand up now. So I'm just going to plonk that in there until I get some media out. So that's one. Now this one has never been out of the pot. This is come on brain. I was going to say more coffee, but it's too late in the day for that. I won't worry about muddling the tags up. You can tell this has never been repotted since I've got it. It's actually got a zip tie on it, and I don't own zip ties. The trouble is, you tend to do them up a bit tight and they won't expand. So as your plant grows, they end up biting in. I just don't use them basically. I've never seen the need. So this has never been out of its pot. It's another nobly type, but it's got no name. It's a nuisance actually, because the tag that it had on it when I got it would have meant that it would have been an absolutely stunning nobly to own. And then when it came into flower, it wasn't the one that it said on the tag. I was actually quite disappointed. I'd have loved to have owned that particular one. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a nobly that was in the shades of orange and yellow type colours, which is unusual for noblies. Now this is in an awful lot of stones, and it's okay. So we better repotted this. Marius, I think, ex-Jeff Ann's plant. Yeah, so this has been potted up nicely. Whatever media was used must have been good quality, because it's been in this pot a long time. The roots around the top of the pot are white. That doesn't mean they're actually active roots, but this has got a lot of roots, and I'm just looking now. This is the one that had the accident and it fell over. No, this isn't the accident one. This is the one that something ate right into the two latest growths. So these two latest growths here, something ate into them. And I took them off and put some cinnamon on to dry the joints. And whatever it was hasn't touched the plant since. And I never got whatever it was. So it could still be lurking. But if it is, it's certainly not damaged this plant anymore. That's got a lot of roots. I'm going to take some of the roots off round the back. I'll be back. There's something I haven't done that I should do. Sorry about that. Just as I went to cut into the second plant, I realised I hadn't got some alcohol out to sterilise the scissors. It's a precaution that's worth doing for the sake of a few seconds. You know, it saves passing any problems from one plant to another. And as I said, for the amount of time it actually takes, it's not worth the risk really. I take that risk sometimes. But I must try and stop doing it on camera because it might encourage others to go down that path when in fact I would have been just being lazy basically. That's all it would have been. It wouldn't have been because I've thought it through and thought I don't need to. It would have been purely that I was being lazy. So it would be better not to. Right, that's a quick trim on the roots. The rest of the roots are staying. That's a good root system. There's a few bits of old media in there. They don't matter. And that, as I said, this should start growing from the base very soon now. I should have waited really until those new shoots started, and then I'd have been guaranteed some new roots. I've got plenty of roots. I don't need new roots to repot this. What I do need to do though is don't get those roots soaking wet. Yeah? So it needs to be kept on the drier side until we get our new growths. And then we can start the feeding and watering well stuff. Right, now the next one is a Latoria type. And this is the one that's never bloomed. Plenty big enough to have bloomed, but it's got a massive new growth coming here. That's where the new roots will come. The root system on this is very big. There's a lot of it, but they're not good roots. They're not that good. This has been grown on from a seedling, so tiny little canes gradually getting bigger and bigger. And that's means that the fact it hasn't bloomed yet, it will be a first time bloomer if it ever gets round to it, and that can explain to a degree why it hasn't bloomed, because I don't know how old it is. You see what I mean? And some plants literally have to go 5 or 6 years before they're old enough to bloom, and then they've got to be big enough and strong enough. You know, I don't think this is going to come out very easy at all. Well wedged in there with lots of roots coming out through holes. I think this is going to be difficult, but the one thing I mustn't do is damage the new growth. So I don't, it doesn't worry me if I actually break any of the other canes. I just want that new growth intact. This is not going to come out. So next thing we will do is cut off all the roots sticking out of holes. Give it a chance. Just literally trim these back to the holes. There is a lot of them, so there would be resistance there. Not only are those roots sort of poking out through the holes, but they could have attached to the side of the pot, the outside of the pot, which again would be causing some resistance. If necessary, I will cut the pot, but we'll give it a couple more tugs before we get to that drastic state. I mean, this is a pot that I've butchered anyway. I've made lots of holes in it with a soldering iron. So, and being a Latoria type, a nice airy pot to get it through the winter when it's going to be too cold for the plant and it will stop growing. You know, is worth doing. I'm sure you can't see what on earth I'm doing because again I've got the camera on that side. I can't help it, I'm right-handed and I hold things with my left hand and that gets in the way of the camera. That's just how it is at the moment. I'm trying to do a lot in one session here, and I might not even film potting these because that is where the repetition comes in. See now, looking at the canes, this cane here and this cane here are relatively new, and that's where the latest root system is. But look where the next new growth has come out. It's come out right round the back of the plant. So, right, are you going to come out now? No, that's it, you've had your chance. Sacrifice the pot. My time is more valuable than a pot I probably didn't pay for. Well, most of the pots I get have come in on, you know, with the plant that I bought. And then they get potted on into a different one and I'm left with pots. You also get pots left over from when plants haven't made it. You know, I only throw the plant out, I don't throw the pot out. Yeah, see, there's some good roots around here. But this is another absolutely solid root mass, and this has got very old, tired roots in places that are coming off, and the best time to take them off is now, and then that will help the media come off. So we cut into there, where the old roots are, prior to this, and then we can get into the centre of the plant where the worst of the dead roots are. Yeah, there's even some signs of moss that was left on the plant. As I said, that I haven't taken this out of the pot. This has never been repotted. So this is a very old, tired root system. But round the front of the plant are some reasonable roots. And we should get some more reasonable roots coming out from where that new growth is in the not too distant future. Right, so the next thing is the back end of the plant's coming off. Where all these tiny little, let me just show you what I'm talking about here. These are the little seedling canes. They're a bit shriveled, and at that size they serve no purpose. Only canes like this are going to be worthwhile. So this whole back end here can come off. And that will leave me with like a semicircle where the plant's grown away from the seedling canes. So we will take this back end right off. What are you doing here? Looks good. I just want to get this bit off here. Cool. It's a woody bit. I'm just going to try and tease a bit more out of where these better roots are. There we go. And just trim the roots up. In a small pot, probably the smallest one I can get it in. The Latoria types, for me, will always be difficult to get through the winter with the cooler temps. So the smaller the pot, the less likely it is to hold too much water through those winter months, when the roots can rot quite easily. So there we go, that's that one. That's 3. And then the last one, I don't think it's going to have many roots at all, and it's in a pot that is far too big. And this is Spectabile, Aussie one. This will come out of the pot quite easy. Won't be anything holding it in. Another little clip there. That looks like it was staked to hold it steady when it was potted. Now this was me that potted this. Why on earth I thought it needed a pot as big as that, I don't know. But it could have been because it had a spreading root system that I just couldn't get in the pot. Oh, it's got quite a lot of charcoal in here. I don't expect to find many good roots on this. It's not a healthy plant, and I'm never going to grow this very well simply because it's a warm grower. You know, this is I don't know though. I think it's one that's, you know, temperature tolerant, so it can be found at higher elevations, but it's often found in very dry conditions as well, sort of bordering on arid. Right, just going to remove some of this old tired root system. That won't be doing any good, and it'll just be holding moisture around the base of the plant, so which we don't want. This is a plant that doesn't like to get too wet and stay wet. Now the only place we've got new growths here is here, and there's actually three quite close together, but they're tiny and they have no strength. But perhaps with some new media underneath them, they might get going a bit better. Now I have to stop and look, are there any canes that need coming off? Yeah. There's a cane I want to take off. There's two canes I'd like to take off, but they are right next to where the new growths are, so they will have to stay. I could damage the new growths by working in that area. But we will take these two off. Again, there's just too many old leafless canes on this plant. For the size of the plant, there's not enough leaved canes to balance them out. So, let's see what we can do. This seems to push out new growths in strange places. I mean, this was a new growth at one point. It's up the other end of the plant. Do you know, I've got a feeling this is two plants. It is, it's two plants. That makes far more sense. So we've got a plant here that pushed up that new growth, which was quite weak, and it pushed up this one. This one's even got nubbins that could possibly bloom. It's also got some manky roots. We'll clean it up. I will pot them both. I might actually put them in separate pots so that I can put them in really small pots. But this one's got no signs of new growths on it, not at the moment, but it does have some signs of some roots that looks like they started and then stopped growing. So they may start again if they get into some new media, and they might not. So I'm just going down to individual roots now and feeling them to see if they're solid or not. There's some that look bad, but they actually feel quite solid, and then there's some that just aren't. Right, so that's that one. There's another manky one there, that'll do. So that's that one. And then the other piece has got the new growths on, and virtually no decent roots. There's not much in the root system here that's actually salvageable. I may well be putting this in a pot to die. But it has got new growths. If new growths can push up new roots, then it will be saved. There are nubbins at the base of those new growths, so it has the potential to root. But when all these soggy roots have been taken off, there isn't going to be much left. None of these are any good. This probably comes into the category of got left in the pot too long, and probably with the lower temperatures during the winter months with the shorter days, this probably stopped growing, in which case it should have been kept incredibly dry, and it wasn't. So no roots left on that. Nonetheless, we will pot it as it has three new growths, and you probably won't be able to see that because it's so tiny, but you can just see the start of some roots at the base of this growth. They are tiny, literally 2 millimeters long, but that is roots. How big they are doesn't matter that much as long as they're going to grow. Right, that's the mess done. All the plants separated out. A look at the root systems, a chat about them. The big, I forgot what it's called now, Sweet Pinky Momoko, that will go in the smallest pot I can get it in and position it in such a way that it stays upright this time round. We might even put the rock back in the bottom of the pot, wherever the rock went. There's a rock here somewhere, there it is. If I put that in the bottom of the pot, it will save crocking and it should help balance it, although the weight of that compared with the weight of the plant is minimal. So that will go in quite a small pot, but it can't go in a tiny pot, it won't stay upright. But if necessary, I'll stand it in a clay pot. So that's that one. The other nobly, which is this one, that will just go in a reasonable pot. It's got a good root system. I will squash it in to that sort of size pot like that and make sure that the root system is quite dry. I've deliberately kept these reasonably dry. So the new media should slide in between these roots and fill the gaps reasonably well. And then that should grow on. But it has no signs of new growths yet. So that's that one. And then this Latoria type, this is Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense. So it's a hybrid cross with a species, which is still a hybrid then. Nice new growth on it, but no real decent roots on it. But these roots here, it's a branching root system. These roots over here could start to grow. Again, getting some media, you get some media a bit more up round the base of the plant without burying the base of the plant. Yeah, that's that one. And then the other one was the Spectabile, which is now 2. We've got a piece here which is rootless but has the capability of possibly producing a new root system quite quickly, in which case it might be salvageable. And this growth, which hasn't opened its leaves yet, is potentially capable of growing on and getting to a reasonable size if it gets some roots going into some media that's not old and sour. So the one behind it, the little one, I don't think that will get any bigger, and I don't think this one will. They are already set in their ways, so they were just very weak. And then the other one, which is the bigger plant basically, does have a few reasonable roots, but the latest new growth on there isn't big and strong, and it has root nubbins that may start growing again. They're not actively growing, they haven't got growing tips. So that's what I'm with, that's what I've got. I've got a lot of mess to clear up and get everything out the way, and these are not necessarily all going to go in the same media. So I'm not going to film potting them. Quite honestly, there's dozens and dozens of videos on my channel of potting orchids, and the potting mechanism really doesn't change that much. It really doesn't change that much. You know, you set the plant. The only thing I will say is that if you've got new growths and an older part to the plant, always push the older plant hard up against the edge of the pot so that the new parts of the plant with the new growths are nearer the middle, or as near to the middle as you can get. And then they've got the whole of the rest of that pot to grow into without you having to disturb it again because it's hanging over the edge of the pot. That will give you an amount of time where you don't need to repot again, so it is worth doing. Apart from that, depending on your plant, Phalaenopsis wouldn't mind a few air gaps here and there and would require quite a chunky medium because they don't like soggy roots. These will get a medium that allows them to stay dry for periods in the winter time. So it won't be tiny small bark. Yeah, it won't have any moss in it. So it will be a mixture of small and medium bark with some perlite, and the larger pieces of the bark will go at the bottom of the pot, and then it will be gradated towards the top where some of the smaller pieces are, so that the roots have got something to get straight into. But the larger pieces in the bottom of the pots will mean that the bottom of the pot doesn't stay wet. A common fault is a root system that doesn't go down to the bottom of the pot, and the plant goes into winter like that. Well, the bottom of the pot is not going to dry out through root activity because the plant's going to slow right down in winter. Yeah, so the pot stays too wet, and that moisture is affecting the root system even if the roots aren't in it. So it allows them to dry off. So there we go. As I say, it's an unusual potting because I'm not actually potting anything, but the chat and the work and the talk at this stage I think is far more important than, you know, sticking a plant in a pot, poking some media in and putting it to one side, because that's all it will be. And I need to crack on. I've got 4 to do. Time's getting on. Be tea time soon. Yes, on the other channel, the Gardening and Bonsai channel, there was a quick video looking at the new plants I got from Helen's. They're now round the back on a polythene bag, and they've had the hose put on them so that they can stay moist and in the shade, ready for planting up. And one day this week I'll be getting all outstanding plants planted somewhere, and some of the plants I've got will possibly get moved to make space, or because they're too near the front they need to go a bit because they ended up taller than I thought they were going to be, and a few plants to dig up and put into the planted border like the geranium. So there's a bit of work going on that channel. There's my Scots pine, my big bonsai, probably my best tree some would say, has decided to grow fir cones. In other words, it's flowering. So at some point I'm going to have to bring that in here and take them all off. The problem is with a branch on a pine, if it produces a cone on the end of the branch stops growing. It won't get buds, it'll just stop. And when a third of your tree's got cones on it, it's not funny. So they've got to come off. And try not to damage any buds while I'm doing it. So there's that to do, and there's 2 bonsai to repot as well. But they're not desperate yet because the buds aren't swelling. They should do very soon though. While I was driving to Helen's yesterday, a lot of the beech trees are coming into leaf now in the wild, you know, the sort of things, not in pots. But some are still bare leaf, you know, bare. So beech are one of the last trees to come out in this country, and they can come out staggered, some, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later than others. And my 2 hadn't started their bud burst yet, so I've still got plenty of time to do that. So a bit of work going on the other channel, some planting, there's still a bit of pruning to do, and there's some bonsai work to do as well. And over here I've gone through, and I need to crack on with this repotting, I really do. So there we go, that's a start, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Okay, here we go then, all potted up and all seem reasonably stable. This one would not stay upright in the pot, so I've had to double stake it and cross the stakes. That's the little spectabile. Hopefully that will grow on now. The little root nubbins have got some media around them. They've all had a good water. They won't get watered now until they're dry. You make the roots work, basically, make them search for moisture. They've had more than enough moisture now to be absorbed and hydrate the plants. So if they want some more, they'll have to go and get it. That's the other little spectabile. It's quite shallow in the pot, so there's not much media underneath it because it had hardly any roots. And a little stake to hold that one too. And then this was the Nobly hybrid, no ID. Again, that's mostly large bark with a very small amount round the top of smaller bark. That's nice and firm in the pot. That should be okay. And then the last 2, the big ones, the Latoria, for the winter, it's got a very open pot and large bark. There's no small bark on this one, it's just large bark. It's wedged in relatively tight with that large bark. Hopefully, if there are any damaged roots as a consequence, they will branch. It's a branching root system. So say it's had a good water now, and hopefully this new growth over here will produce some new roots. There was no sign of new roots under that growth, but there are active roots in other parts of the plant. So nice open pot, so when we get to winter time and this plant's not happy because it'll be too cold and the days will be too short, well, there might be some lights involved, we shall see. Nowhere near that time yet. Yes, so when it starts getting cold and it's not happy, it'll be kept quite dry, and with an open pot, larger bark, no small bark, and plenty of aeration, a small amount of water now and again will only just hydrate the roots slightly and will not make the media soaking wet. So that's that one. And then the big nobly, the sweet pinky momoko, that really has been forced in the pot. Quite honestly, for the size of the plant, that wasn't a very good root system really in comparison, but there are roots there. The last pair of new growths, well, they didn't get to the full size that the plant is capable of. Yeah, so this is the size of the canes that it's capable of producing, and these are the new canes, or the latest canes. They're not new now. And those two haven't bloomed. All the other canes have bloomed, and some of them have bloomed twice. Yeah. This cane here has bloomed near the top. It's still capable of producing a nubbin or two lower down, as is this one over here, and possibly this little one. Yeah, that hasn't bloomed. So, you know, there are possibilities for a mid-season blooming or late summer blooming on this one. It seems to bloom whenever it likes. It doesn't seem to have a regular nobly pattern where it only blooms late winter and spring, and that's it, that's your lot. Seems to come and go as it pleases. So there we go, that was 4 became 5, and that's 4 off my list, so I'm happy with that. And as I said, just filming me poking them in the pots is repetitive. It extends the video with no real purpose. There's plenty of other videos potting up Dendrobiums if you want to see them. So this was more about what I was going to do with them and why. So anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.